that I'm actually willing to accept responsibility also for things that sometimes go wrong. And in reality, as a leader, that will make the people that work for you more comfortable working for you, because they know that if something goes wrong, I will shoulder that this went wrong. I will not, my gut instinct is not to turn against my individual employees and criticize them and distance myself from the fort.
This is the story behind the story. This is the human side of leadership in biotech. Willing to win. Biotech leaders against all odds. My guest today is Jesper Brandgaard. He learned that success builds reputation, but accountability builds trust. Jesper, when you look at yourself today, not at the title, not at the role, but who you are as a person, what kind of leader are you today?
I'm a more patient leader than I was when I was young. I am a patient that probably appreciate more having very skillful people around me, and have become more cognizant of actually having other people's doing significant part of what I need to have done. And in that sense, I'm probably matured, and I also really enjoy seeing the people around me grow.
I like that. How do you make sure that people grow? I mean, growth is a big word, right? But do you follow up on that?
Yeah, no, I believe one of the greatest gifts you can have as a leader is to have people around you grow and get into new positions through the fact that they have actually worked for you in a role. So I actually see today, and of course, one of my prime roles in my career was being CFO for Novo Nordisk for 18 years. And today I see more than a handful of CFOs in listed Danish companies who've actually grown up in the Novo Nordisk finance organization and went on to find career in other companies. And I find that quite rewarding for me as an individual to see that people have learned something being in my part of the organization and have utilized that. It gives you a fantastic network, and it gives you a huge number of people that you can call, and they will always be willing to help you and give you a good advice or knowing who to contact, etc. So knowing people and have a strong network, and having a network of people that you've had a substantial influence on their career, I think that's very rewarding.
Curious. Tell me about the last time you called somebody.
I think the last time I can recall calling one of my former employees, that was in a situation where I had another colleague. There's been a significant layoff in Novo Nordisk. About 9,000 people have been laid off, 5,000 in Denmark. And I had one of them who had asked for my advice, and I needed a contact at a certain company. And hence there I could easily call the CFO and say, I have this very qualified friend from Novo Nordisk that would like to see what opportunities there are in your company. Could you help me
So you're a
create that
connector.
link? And it was just very easy for me to connect. So
Yeah,
I
very
helped
good.
another friend, and it's a personal friend. His son and I have, his son and my son have been playing soccer together, so I was pleased to help him.
Oh, very nice. What is one belief you never compromised throughout your career?
I would hope that most people would say that my ethical rules are pretty strong in terms of how I work, how I find reasonable solutions. I would argue that I haven't compromised on ethics or have been seen as compromising values. I think I've learned that in Novo Nordisk, a very value-driven company. I see it as a big help when you have to take decisions, that you have kind of a moral discipline or moral foundation to stand on which to take decision. But I guess it's my morals, so whether others would anticipate them or view them the same way, well, that's probably maybe a question.
Yes, it is. I mean, if you have three people, you have four opinions, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I think value driven is the most important part that you can have as a leader, but you also have to be flexible on certain situations. Can you tell me about this trade-off of values and immediate needs? Because
Mm,
sometimes I know it from my
mm,
personal
mm,
environment. We are always open to jeopardize our values in order to fulfill our immediate needs. There's always a conflict between needs and values.
Yeah. I think I would also, in that instance, I would err on the side of being pragmatic instead of being dogmatic. And if you kind of stand very, very firm on certain values, it sometimes will guide you into a situation where you can create win-win solutions. And I think often when you're dealing with people, you have to also find solutions which are not only according to your own values, but also to try to find common ground between the values of the person you're sitting in front and what you could still fit in with your skeletons of
Yes.
values. So, no, I think I would view myself as a pragmatic person. So, and with that, not saying that I walk away from my principles every second, but just basically try to find solutions together with other people that make people not feel that they significantly lost faith in being encountered with me. I had
Yes.
a significant learning. I had 3 years early in my career in Singapore and being a board member in a portfolio of Southeast Asian companies, and I really learned there the importance of not letting individuals lose face and find ways to work with that. I think I've actually benefited from that later in my career in terms of developing a bit more emotional IQ than what I would otherwise have had, being a quite result-focused individual.
Seems like a pivotal moment, a leadership lesson.
I think I have had a couple of incidences in my career. One, of course, in situations where business fortunes wasn't as expected, and I had to send out a profit warning. That is a very difficult moment for
Yes.
a proud CFO. How to deal with that, and then.
Yes.
But I think I've come through that very much with the view of saying this is a fantastic learning opportunity. What can we do going forward that will ensure that we do not land in this situation, and how can we do things better? And I actually later made a drive within Novo Nordisk that basically was learning from mistakes, which was the drive of introducing quality discipline in the whole area of finance, legal, etc. And I think actually I've learned that mistakes happen, and I often say that it's only people that doesn't do anything that doesn't make mistakes. So mistakes happen, but as long as you don't repeat them and as long as you take the opportunity of learning from them, then it's actually good. So I think I think I found a way to have this very difficult situation, and then over time actually use the learnings from that situation to basically create a better operating activity that I was
Yes.
responsible for.
Yes, you mentioned now 2 points. One very difficult moment where you had to communicate a profit warning, and the other one
A
is
disappointment to our
yeah,
investors, the people I
yeah,
was responsible for serving.
yes.
Yeah.
And the other thing is how you implemented the learning in your future self. But first, how did you feel? How did you feel in the moment you realized the numbers won't be good enough? I have to take the call.
Of course, there was an element of being disappointed with myself that I didn't see the signals coming. But when I then analyzed it more, it turned out, for my recollection, to be a combination of 4 or 5 things happening at the same point of time. And it was the cumulative effect of that that basically did not enable us to live up to the expectation we had. So it was not so that I kind of was very hard on myself, but I basically learned from the individual events saying, how can we do that better? So I felt disappointed to some degree, but I also felt that, well, the way you to get out of this is to be clear and transparent about what was the factors that led to this, and be very open in communicating about it, and in addition, following up in subsequent quarters on the on those exact events that led to that effect. How are they standing today? And I think that is a way of regaining the confidence of your, in this case, investors.
And also confidence in your decision making in signal detection
Yeah.
in the future, right?
If I just may add one thing here, what actually also followed that was we introduced back in the early 2000s, we introduced a quite comprehensive risk management system that basically enabled the organization to report into a central function that overlooked all of the major risks of Novo Nordisk, and that turned out to be quite useful. So,
Very good.
so it provided again an opportunity to do things better in a smarter way,
Yeah, very good.
and which a thing that laser became a general standard of reporting and management systems within large
Yeah.
organizations.
I think that's a masterpiece of leadership. You didn't take it personal and try to hide it. You took massive action and changed it into a better outcome for the future.
I think that's somewhat right. I do also actually see it as one of my skills as a leader that I'm actually willing to accept responsibility also for things that sometimes go wrong.
Yes, you
And
have
in
to.
reality, as a leader, that will make the people that work for you more comfortable working for you because they know that if something goes wrong, I will shoulder that this went wrong. I will not, my gut instinct is not to turn against my individual employees and criticize them and distance myself from the fort, but basically accept responsibility for my team and say, we did this mistake, we will learn from this, and we will use it to become better.
Yes, very good.
There is actually, I think it's very, very important as a leader that you are willing to accept that mistakes happen and
Very
that
good.
you are to blame for some of those mistakes.
We should all talk more about that vulnerability and that openness. But another question. You've held 29 board roles, 17 as a chair. Why isn't it boring?
Well, I think first, why did it happen to me? Well, I think the way it works is that I think generally responsibility ends with the one that takes responsibility. So I think I quite early in my career was seen as one that basically took responsibility for different difficult situations and found a way to make them be handled and solve them. And if you take that approach to the challenges that you face in your life, you're very likely to be given more responsibility for different roles. And I think that's how it's worked out most of my career, that I've continuously been entrusted with more responsibility, not necessarily because I've been looking for it, but because that's what happened when you solve people's problem. They would want you to solve other problems for them. I think that's true.
No, very good. I think it also gives you the opportunity to have a bit of versatility and a bit of challenge also to grow.
Yeah, no, I think the board roles I've had has certainly helped me leverage my skill of understanding more than one industry. So I would pride myself in not having solely a good understanding of the pharmaceutical industry, but I've actually been involved in a number of other industries, both a software activity, I think was the eighth at the point in time, the eighth largest software house in Europe called SimCorp, an asset management system that was sold internationally. I was also chairing a company that was selling engineering services mainly in Europe. So I've been entrusted with overseeing different businesses in different industries. And I think through, especially my MBA, I've learned to basically have a relative quick grasp of the value chain in different industries. And I find that intellectually stimulating. And I still today in my portfolio sit on an advisory board in a smaller Danish venture fund that invest in all kinds of activities, mainly industrial business to business, but also a quite significant part of that is applications, IT, software, etc. That I've been in, and services which I've been involved in. And I think I find that stimulating to
That's the
assess:
point, yeah.
is it a good idea to invest in this company, or is it not a good idea? And make this, make a quick analysis based on a 10-page memo on the specific company, and applying that skill in understanding various businesses. I think that has been very useful throughout my career.
Yeah.
Also in the senior executive roles I have in pharma, because you will have suppliers, and having an understanding of how the value chain is and how the business stream is for your suppliers, which is a different business than yours. I think that has helped me in multiple situations reach better solutions with our suppliers or
That's interesting.
partners.
So it is a source for your creativity and innovation somehow. If you try to dive into other business models, into
Mm,
other industries.
yeah. I find that inspirational, and I've throughout my career with Novo Nordisk tried to work with partners in a way where I generally like that we typically had one or two very good partners in various areas and not a handful, because the only way to create really good solution is to create a business model where both are actually making a reasonable living out of the relationship in a transparent way. And I've used that in Novo Nordisk to have lengthy and good relationship with trusted partners. And I've also significantly been using it in LEO, when we have totally restructured the business model of LEO Pharma over the last 4.5 years, and still very much drawing on this learning that it's not all about a cutthroat price negotiation at each point in time for each deliverable, but it's rather having a transparent, good relations with partners you trust, and where the partners also know that if they continue to deliver on what you had agreed, there's very likely to be additional business coming down the line. And that's kind of creating this win-win atmosphere with your partners that you should generally pursue.
And you
Mhm.
came from consulting.
Yep.
Very, very soon you came into positions of big responsibility as a CFO.
Mhm. Mhm.
And you also leaded Novo Nordisk Hemophilia Foundation. Can you tell me something about that time?
It actually occurred at a quite fortunate point in time for me to take on the role of becoming chair, because it happened at a point in time when Novo Nordisk was going through some financial distress around 2016-17, and which meant that there was limitations to the donations that Novo Nordisk could do to the Hemophilia Foundation. The Hemophilia Foundation was based in Switzerland, and that's a very costly place to operate out of. But that was where the biopharm business and the hemophilia activities of Novo Nordisk was headquartered out of. So that was why the foundation was also in Switzerland. And I basically had to go in and look at their operations, saying, okay, we are currently spending more than 50%, actually significantly more than 50% of our revenue on administering the funds we are giving away, and only having a fraction of the money that was donated to the business every year to actually go to projects involving hemophilia patients in the low-income countries of the world. So it was basically a clear situation where the foundation was not effective in creating bang for the buck of actually supporting the project, because our setup was too expensive. So I worked closely together with a very competent managing director of the foundation, and we created a new setup, much more relying on people being out where the project was, being it in South America, being it in Africa, etc. And that you could actually have good, competent resources there at a fraction of the cost. Made very, very clear ambitions for how we could reduce our operating cost, and then through that ensure that we could give more directly to help hemophilia boys with who had poor treatment, helping them with better treatment setups around the world. It was very rewarding, and there was, I think, there was also first there was a bit fright in the organization of what was I up to. But in reality, I think they quickly learned that in reality, what we were trying to do is basically be able to do more with what we had. And over time, we were also quite successful in getting additional contributors to this hemophilia foundation, and thereby multiplying the effect we had on hemophilia treatment in low-cost countries. So I think it was quite rewarding. So, and it was an interesting time for me to work with key opinion leaders in the hemophilia industry. So very, very clever physicians that were actually doing the treatment with patients in Brazil, in US, and in Africa, etc. It was an interesting experience, and a complete different area. I had not been responsible for a foundation ever before. And even though it's not a for-profit business, I think you can learn a lot from finding out how could we run this activity in a way that we deliver more. And here the wish was from the ones who donated money to us that we generated a significant difference for patients in countries where it was not easy to get high quality hemophilia treatment.
You cared about the cause, but you also cared about the efficiency. Most of the nonprofits have difficulties in creating higher efficiency. How would you understand creating higher efficiency in nonprofits right now?
I was involved there from something like 2017 to 22. And I think my learning really was that it was all about creating a clear measures for how much value we can give out. How successful does the partners that we work with rate our projects? And the only way to get additional funding so you could do more was to be extremely transparent. on the effect of the money they gave every year, and what value did we bring back to them, and how could we show that we were becoming more efficient year by year. And that, of course, involves, as I mentioned, just one thing, where we located the people responsible for project, how we handle administration. Did we do that onshore, or did we do that offshore? So all the principles you do in running a normal business, you can also apply that, or not all, but a lot of the mechanism you have for lowering your cost base, you can use that in a foundation as well, and then make it transparent to the one that donate, what effect, what bang are they getting for their buck. So to me, it's a little bit like, explaining a board or a CEO, are we doing okay with finance in our corporation? And of course, one ratio there is what percentage of sales do we use on doing finance for the whole organization. I introduced that number quite quickly in my career as CFO, and that it's standard today, but it wasn't at that point in time. It was quite cumbersome to get together all the numbers, all the costs for all the individuals in a global corporation. What is our annual cost for running it, and how is it relative to turnover? And basically documenting that we were becoming ever more efficient year by year. And it's exactly the same thinking I applied then to a foundation. How can we document that by each Switzer franc we were actually doing that at a lower administrative cost every year? And donators, the ones donating, understand that and appreciate it.
Yes. Let us look at your motivation. What I understand is that curiosity always drove you and will be driving you.
To some degree, it's also driven by an element of fixing things. So let me use LEO Pharma as an example. When I came here, something was clearly not working. The sales had been flat for 5 years. The company was making a very, very significant loss, a negative operating margin in the area of 20%. So for each 100 kroner of sales, we realized we were making a loss of 20 kroner. That's not a sustainable situation to be in. It's a company that, or it's a situation that very quickly will drive a company into bankruptcy. So it won't work. So basically, I have also a dedication to fix problem, and I think what challenged me in Leo was finding a solution to that problem. I think we've come a very long way to solve that problem, and I think that's very motivating. There was also this special situation about Leo, that the founder of Leo Pharma was actually the first. He was a pharmacist called August Kongsted. He was the first to provide finance for the start of Novo Nordisk in Nordic Insulin Lab, where he provided the finance to the two key persons, the Nobel laureate August Krogh and a Danish physician called Rados. So he provided them with the money. So basically you could say what I was doing as a experienced Novo Nordisk officer was going out and fixing the old company of the founder, of the first company in Novo Nordisk, Nordic Insulin Lab. And that's, to me, we kind of owed that to our founders' business. And I think we're very close to be able to say that problem has now been fixed. The way that we can really document it is that if we are successful within the next year or so in listing Leo Pharma, then it's clear that we have a viable going concern with a broad international investor base that can live for many years forward.
You talked about the founder of LEO Pharma. He left a legacy, he left some values. Of course, this is too far away. But maybe there are also other people who are closer to you right now, who are influencers to you.
Absolutely. The way I look at it, and the way I've dealt with that in my career, is basically recognizing that if you interview people with leadership responsibility, they would typically, if you ask them how many people have had a profound impact on your career, and they would probably be saying somewhere, I guess, between 2 to 5 people having had a substantial impact on your career. And I've actually utilized that myself in setting up ambitions for individual development plans and how you coach and develop your leaders inside your organization, with the ambition of leaving the one who has been entrusted with having a portfolio of people reporting to them, that they become one of those 5, so they will make a profound impact on the people they're responsible for. And it's always been a driving factor for me that I should really try to make a substantial impact on the people that I've been entrusted with. I've myself made that analysis and also came up with some 4 or 5 people that I had um, the pleasure. Sometimes it was not a full pleasure. Sometimes I had the learning experience of working with them. And actually, what I found is that some of them I would say I've learned a lot from, and some people in my early days of Novo Nordisk. So Mads Øvlisen, CEO of Novo Nordisk through more than 2 decades. In terms of values, his morals and values were really remarkable, and you could only admire the way he dealt with values. So he was a big inspiration. The former CFO that entrusted me with the role of CFO of Novo Nordisk, Kurt Anker, was also a financial genius, and he was also, in terms of setting some standards, he was good. He said if there was one thing he hated was surprises, and I actually entrusted that, built that into a value that we would have no surprises. So you learn. Sometimes you are lucky to have some fantastic leaders and you learn from them. I also had an early boss in Arthur Anderson, where I wouldn't say all of his values were right, but he was very clever. But through that, you also learn some of things you didn't want to copy deliberate, but by seeing some ways of operating which was not treating people with respect. So I think you will have people that are influencing you, and you take a lot of good things, but you also take some things that you want to do differently. And that's also an opportunity, but they have been important for my career. So I think I was probably having 4 individuals, I could say, which had had a significant impact on my career.
Do they know it?
Think I think most of them know it. It's not so that I've kind of sit down, I made this list and now you should hear. I haven't done that, but I think it's a good reflection that each leader in the biotech pharma space should do, is sit down and think a little bit about who has had a significant impact on where I am today, and what is it that I've learned from them, and what is it that I can take from them that I can utilize in my building of the people that I'm now entrusted with overseeing their
I think this is a very good advice. Send out postcards maybe also to the 4 leaders.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
And say, hey, thank you. You made a difference here, right? Did you ever have an uncertain moment where you didn't know what to do?
I think one of the blessings of being a good leader is having the ability to be uncertain and reflect on things. And I think I've often been in a situation where I was not certain about what was the right decision. And there's quite a few times where I've kicked the can a little bit down the road when it was not apparent to me what was the right decision to take. So you have to have uncertainty.
Face it.
Yeah, actually, embrace it, because there will be situations which are difficult. And if it was simple and easy, it would have been solved. So often things are not that simple and easy. And then I think I have a pretty good ability to say, what is it that I need to fix now? And what is it that I can defer to come up with a solution later when it's more apparent what that decision should be? And what things can we do in between that will make it simpler for us to take the decision in next week or in a month's time or whatever. So I think I'm very susceptible to understanding what are required to decide now, because very often I think leaders will feel that people come to you and they want a decision now, because their life would be much easier if you just made a very clear decision now. But it's not always smart to make a decision now. Sometimes it's smart to await, but making it clear what is the process going to be for reaching a decision. But I don't see you should be decisive as a leader, but you should only be decisive to the degree that it's needed, and you should accept that there are elements that are uncertain. Um, but so that's one part of the answer. The other part of the answer is, as a leader, I'm pretty good at dividing, whenever there's something that's super complex, dividing it into individual components and then fix one problem at a time. And very often when you have good people around you that can help you fix one problem at a time, clarity will emerge over time. Decompose problems into more manageable things and deal with them early.
You demand clarity also in your interactions with your colleagues,
Yeah.
with your
Yeah. And then I
Product
demand,
service, yeah.
and I'm very clear on demanding what I need you to find out is this and this and this, and I need you to get back to me by this and this, because through that we can then find a solution in a week's time where we can take the right decision for the company if we have all these inputs coming into the situation. And also accepting, Christian, that you probably in most situations as a leader, you only have 80% of the perfect knowledge. I mean, and accept that. I mean, I'm entrusted by the owners of the business that I've been responsible for. I'm entrusted of making meaningful business decision not based on perfect information. And I think my owners know that I don't have perfect information, but if I can justify why we make the decisions and we have a reasonable basis, then they expect me to take decisions, because not taking decision is also a problem.
Me understand your inner conversation that you have with yourself in those moments where you recognize or notice, well, I have absolutely imperfect information, maybe 50%, 40% certainty. What do you tell yourself in that moment?
Well, I think the first thing I should do is basically say, if it was my money, would I embark on this project at this point in time? Because I think I think very much in the model of saying, who's the principal, who's the agent, what is my role? Am I here the agent for the principal, the owner of the business? And hence I take the decision that way. Would I do it if it was my money? So that's a standard I very often apply. But I think the as we just discussed, I think the rational choice in that situation, if having only 50% information, I would probably say, well, I don't think the principal, the owner of the business, would pay me to go into a casino and choose to play either red or black. So I wouldn't do it.
So that means you would rather make more research in order to have more information based on this example.
I would accept that I would miss the opportunity unless you told me, well, Jesper, if you play on one color and if that color comes out on the roulette and you get 5 times the money back, and if you play on the other color and that color comes out and you lose the one coin you thrown in, well, then you and I would both agree that if I played 2 times, I would probably make money. So again, it comes down to the knowledge. Is the knowledge good enough to accept the 50-50, Rich?
Yeah.
But generally speaking, I would say, yeah, then I would defer, because I don't think the principal would entrust me on going on a casino.
And so it all comes back to rational decision making and statistics. I think this is an important part in
I
those
think actually,
situations.
if I just may add one thing, Christian, I think
Please.
there was the founder of the Danish shipping conglomerate.
Maersk.
It was actually Søren Maersk. I think he once said something like, "Well, if somebody is presenting you with a business opportunity and they are not able to explain it to you on the flip side of an envelope, then it's probably not something you should pursue." And I actually have applied that logic a lot of times. I think that the best business decisions you take is some that is very easy to understand and explain to others.
I mean, in your example, it's of course about spending money or investing in
Yeah.
in a business, right?
In the pharma industry, it's very often looking at, should I acquire this product or shouldn't we acquire this product? I mean, that's a lot to do with the pharma industry. So I think they should think of that when they are discussing with big pharma in terms of projects they want to sell, clear why it's a good idea.
Talking about big pharma, what can smaller biotech companies learn from big pharma or from bigger biotech companies?
It's funny.
Because usually you hear the question the other way around, right? But I want to hear what the bigger companies do better.
I think the world is moving away from fully integrated pharma companies. I think the fully integrated pharma companies was based on a logic that they could more efficiently do all parts of the value chain. They could do all parts of the supporting functions to the main value stream. That was the way to operate. I think that model is gradually falling apart. I've seen it here in the restructuring of LEO, a company. When I came with some 5,700 people, today we are just over 4,000. And a lot of the things that we used to do ourselves is now done by our partners. And I think this thing about learning where can you work with partners and what do you have to do yourself. I think big pharma and mid-sized pharma is more and more learning to work and operate more lean and work in partnership with others. And I think you could say small biotechs have learned that all along, because they basically always have been restrained, or typically have been restrained on cash, and have to find ways without doing a building this full capability of certain elements in themselves in terms of production, in terms of running clinical trials, etc. They have found ways to work with partners, contract manufacturers, contract development organization, etc. So I think I have to answer that question. I don't think there's so much that biotech can learn from big pharma. I think the partnership mindset that is being applied more and more in large pharmacos. I think small biotechs have learned that all along the way. Maybe what we talked about earlier, this long-term partnership thinking of saying, choosing one or two core partners and then work with them along the way and allow their partners to grow with the company, and also have some of the significant value that emerges as biotech becomes successful. I think they can learn that thinking a little bit longer, and not just how do we afford to get to the next milestone, which is probably always often the challenge in biotechs.
And you also spoke about the future of biotech pharma relationships. Before we come to the last question, what do you think is most essential in the next decade in the partnerships between biotech pharma hybrids? What is a trend for you, and where should the industry go in an optimistic way?
Well, I think first, in the macro picture, I more and more see that the innovation in the pharma industry in terms of what turns into better solution for patients or products, I see that more and more being invented, not in a fully integrated pharma company. It's more and more being occurring with biotechs. I think part of the problems you had in the collaboration between biotechs and pharma was that historically big pharmacos both had their internal development projects, own inventions, and then the biotechs, and then they were driving both forward. And generally speaking, I don't think big pharmacos was very good in keeping the biotechs fully informed and working as partners on the development of the biotech products once they moved one or two phases forward. I think that will change significantly as the business model more and more moves towards, probably the big pharmacos are good in developing products and having them registered and approved and launched globally, but the biotechs are a better place to host early innovation. But I think the ones who are going to emerge successfully is the one that creates true partnerships between the biotech company and the large or mid-sized pharmaco, if they partner up with Leo, and then working hand in hand and basically create a relationship where they as true partners, not only in terms of the financial model of milestones and royalties, but also as actually knowledge transfer between the two organizations and participation in that process. So you basically accept as a larger company that you will grow your partner. And that's why I think the ones who are better able to convince biotech companies to say, come work with us because we are going to be true partners, I believe those companies will be more successful. And it's actually, I think one of the decisions we've taken in Leo Pharma is one of saying, we don't believe in doing target discovery ourselves. We don't believe we're the best to do that. But we do believe in working very close with biotech companies on making their products a success. And we do believe that we have the ability of taking their products globally in a fast and efficient way and pursue them commercially. And that's why they should come along with the journey. And if that then journey involves that they take certain roles along the way, we should only be happy, because in a successful product, there's plenty of profits to share and there's plenty of learning to share. And you should again think a little bit win-win, because if you're successful, there should basically be a learning exercise for both of us.
This is a very optimistic and energetic shootouts to biotech companies aspiring to partner with Leo in other mid-sized companies, right? My last question before we close this, is there a book that you can recommend?
I would actually refer to one I read very early in my career, which was, I think an American guy who was running a sports entertainment management company. Mark McCormack, I think was his name. And he wrote a book that what they don't tell you, or what they don't teach you at Harvard Business School, or something like that, I think was the name of it. And that was all about being street smart. And I actually do think there is kind of a meaningful approach in thinking about, don't necessarily always go by the book. Invest in learning people, invest in being with people. Principle I've often applied in hiring people would be, do I feel like I would like to stand at a bar and drink a beer with this individual? Would that be a good experience? Because I do feel making those, what I would call street smart solution, actually turns out to be a good idea very often in business. It's pretty simple, but I think it's making street smart solution often work. You don't have to do things by the book.
Thank you very much, and looking forward to talk to you soon again, maybe here or somewhere else. Goodbye.
Thank you, Christian.
Willing to Win. Biotech Leaders Against Our Odds. A podcast with biotech leaders for biotech leaders. Stories about conviction. The good, the bad, the ugly.